Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee. Da-da-da-da-da. Drums keep pounding a rhythm to the brain. La-da-da-da-dee. Da-da-da-da-da.
All right. Hopefully, we don't have any issues today with this one, but we are back with another niche on the mic live stream. Typically, we'll have some form of issue, but I feel confident today is going to be the day that we don't have any issues. Now, confidence is key. Now, today with us, we got Scott Guyatt, Mr. Action RC, widely popular podcaster on Spotify predominantly, but you've also got obviously podcasts and like everywhere.
Yeah.
But introduce yourself, Scott.
Mate, it's good to be with you. We have already had one disaster. I just knocked my water bottle over off the side of the desk, so there's water everywhere in my office. No, not too bad. Mate, it's good to be with you. Yeah, been around RC for just a little while now, since 1985. We go back to, and yeah, love everything about racing. Love watching it, telling stories about it, writing about it, now podcasting about it, and just being at the track and hanging out. And lovely to join you on the show this afternoon to see what we can get up to.
Yeah, so we got a nice little lineup of things to talk about. Got my little dot points here. A couple of things we're going to run through. Obviously, a bit of your actual racing sort of side of things, a fair bit obviously on Action RC, the podcast, that sort of side of things a little bit later. And then even later again, we're going to talk about obviously major events that you've been to recently, which includes the Vintage Bash, as well as we'll even have a bit of a chat about the Chargers Carnival. So yeah, quite a big part in that as well.
Yeah.
So starting off, obviously, as you mentioned there, you've been racing for a long, long time, and your career of racing has actually overlapped with my own family career of racing in a way as well. My old man, actually, we used to race you, start off with. So tell me a fair bit about your career and where you got started and how you got started.
Yeah, we were. I was a kid, a little kid, like a 14-year-old, and like every 14-year-old in Australia in 1985-ish, I was in love with the Tamiya Hotshot, the Tamiya Frog, the Tamiya Hornet, and the Tamiya Grasshopper. There was no internet or YouTube or any of that kind of stuff, but we would get Toy World catalogs, and I would just ogle over these cars, and somehow managed to talk my dad at a weak moment into we were in a Kmart, actually. They were selling those cars in Kmart back then, and we found one on a big special, and we bought a Hotshot. And nearly 40 years and tens of thousands of dollars later, that's the end of it. So yeah, we were on holidays at the time. We bought this car, we built it. We had all sorts of adventures over the first few days trying to figure it out. And then we actually found ourselves at a little racetrack in Townsville, and that track's still there by the Heatley Pool, the Longtan Pool. And we didn't know anything about racing. We were just playing. But we went and found this racetrack, and I managed to kind of somehow do a Scandinavian flick with this Hotshot into this hairpin at the end of the straight. And Dad was like, "How did you do that?" And I was like, "I don't know." But we kind of, we were hooked instantly. Dad's from a motorsport background, so he'd spent, half his life in rally cars kind of all over Australia. And, so anything with four wheels, and the opportunity to race it was good enough for us. So that's really where it started. We were kids. I had three brothers, so quickly one car turned into three or four cars. And, then when we made it back to Brisbane after our holidays, we found out about a local racetrack and went and joined that track, which was called Lota, a place called Lota down by the Bayside. And that club eventually, after many, many years, kind of turned into what is Chargers today, or was a part of what turned into Chargers today. So we started there in 1986 or something like that, whenever that, there was 100 kids with Hotshots every Sunday morning kind of thing. So that's where it started long time ago.
And it's a very storied history. Obviously, you've been to many events around Australia. And what about international events? Have you been to many international events?
To my disappointment, I suppose, I've never actually raced overseas. So I had the opportunity to go to a couple of world championships with the Australian team in the early 90s, but kind of made different choices and different financial choices and ended up not going. And it is the one regret that I have, actually, having never raced at a world championship. So I'm actually just at the moment pretty tempted by a worlds in Australia in 2025, and there's a part of me that's kind of going, could I stoke the fires for another 18 months and some practice and try and, get back to a point where I was not ever going to be competitive at a Worlds, but, going well enough to at least try and get into the team and go and, enjoy the event. So not quite an overseas race, but that's just floating around in the back of my mind at the moment. Is there
Yeah.
a chance to do a Worlds? Yeah.
Hmm.
You've
Did
done
you
some,
ex-
right? You've done world titles, so you know what
I've
they're
done,
like.
I've done a
Yeah.
couple now, so I'm well equipped to know that I'm going to be mid to low pack and get, absolutely pantsed by, most decent drivers. So that knowledge is well and truly in my mind. And I actually had a chat to my boss, Dom Blackman, from Hybrid Landscapes earlier today, because I'm hoping to be part of the actual, media side or
Yeah.
that sort of side of things. And he asked, would I rather be doing that or the actual racing side? And turning down the actual racing at a home world titles would be,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah.
But actually, setting a bit of a legacy with the race calling side of things. If I was
Yeah.
able, I think that probably stand above coming, 86th or something in the world titles for the third time. So,
I think, like you, I've had a fair bit of opportunity to do media stuff and calling and, did some work with Scotty Ernst this year at the Asian Buggy Champs. And, when the Worlds was announced as being in Australia, I straight away went, I wonder what kind of an opportunity there is to be a part of a media team and, or, covering the event. But then, one of my good old long time racing mates messaged me and said, maybe we should both try and get on the team and go and race at this event. So who knows? Who knows?
yeah, I think
I think
there
it's a tough
potentially
decision because, media, that's really fun to cover a race.
Yeah.
But so
There's
is racing.
there's potential opportunities still, I think, as well. I had a bit of a chat with the RCA Race Media boys, and we'll probably have a bit more of a private chat after this as well about this.
Yeah.
But I think there'll be opportunities potentially, even if you were wanting to do racing and maybe jump on something as well.
Some bits,
Nonetheless,
yeah.
obviously major events and all that sort of stuff aside, well, I guess aside, I'd actually like to know what your actual overall favorite event has been from your past, if you can.
Or
think one
favorite
up.
race ever.
Favorite
Oof.
race ever. It's a tough one.
Gee,
I
there's
know.
been a few. There are certainly favourite tracks that come to mind, and one of them is that we raced the New South Wales Championships on the outside banking of a velodrome in Newcastle in 1992, and it was this really fun little track that used the kind of elevation change, on the side of that kind of velodrome, and a little bit like Canberra, I guess, in that sense of where it's built on the side of the velodrome. And I love racetracks that have elevation in them. So Jimboomba was another one of the old favourites.
Yep.
In terms of on-road tracks, going to the Adelaide Hills, that incredible racetrack up at Littlehampton, the way it rises and falls. So I do think about races like that. So Newcastle was pretty fun. The track was good, and I kind of went okay at that event. I think one of the really favourite races for me from those old days, and let's be honest, I'm most best at telling stories from the old days, is what used to be called the Race of Champions. So the Bankstown Club in Sydney, under the kind of leadership of Dave Smith, would invite the top. Generally, it was 2 heats worth of mod drivers, so top 16 off-road electric drivers from around the country, reedy race style, really.
Yep.
And that was pretty awesome to be a part of. The part of it that I remember the most clearly is the qualifying to set the grid positions for the first race of the weekend was a single lap, hot lap shootout, like Bathurst top 10 style. And
Right.
Dave Smith on the microphone, with all due respect to you and to me, like in his era, he was the guy, right? Like he was the guy. So he would be going nuts on the microphone. You'd be on the track on your own. There'd be literally 200 people lining the side of the track watching you, just you, trying to pull off a hot lap to, so that moment, and there's all the famous names, waiting in line to get up on the driver's stand. So I do think, those kinds of races I really loved. But really, I do love racing. Raced at lots of national titles, on-road and off-road, electric, nitro, whatever it might be. And all of them have a special place. But there's a couple that kind of come to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've noticed actually a little bit more lately, you've been doing a bit of e-buggy action at a 8-scale sort of side of things. Where have you been mainly racing that, would you say?
I spent a bit of time living in Tasmania. Went down there in about 2007 and found like a few people floating around doing bits and pieces of stuff in Launceston. And so we started a little club there. And then I found some 8-scale guys up at kind of Devonport, Latrobe, and they had a little club running, and I was testing all sorts of cars for Racing Lines magazine. And so they'd sent me an 8-scale car, and I went and so I kind of got into 8-scale, literally through that. The guys in Tassie had the club running. I was testing I can't even remember what it was. Probably an LRP ready to run buggy, something like that. And really loved it. Loved 8-scale racing. And as I'm not that good on the mechanical side of it, so I hate working on the cars. Love racing nitro, but I hate working on the cars, and electric's just that much kind of simpler.
Yeah.
So I've kind of dabbled in and on and off for that sort of 10 or 15 years since we were down there. And at the moment, that's the only racing that I'm regularly doing. I've just got an 8-scale buggy to kind of, and I really get out to the track maybe once a month, once every couple of months. Hoping for a race this Saturday. Oh yeah, so that's the kind of thing at the minute, is just for a bit of fun with mates. I am, Mitch, hyper competitive, but I'm trying to just keep that under control and just go there and have some fun, run around at the back of the A final or the top of the B, just enjoy myself. But I am hyper competitive, so that's getting unsatisfying pretty fast. So we'll see.
On-road and off-road sort of side of things. Now,
Mm.
I'm pretty certain you have done a fair bit of on-road as well in your past as well. Was there a preference in your sort of earlier days that you started out in off-road, wanted to stick to off-road, or you just sort of did a bit of on-road and enjoyed it a bit, or that sort of side?
grew up racing electric off-road, and really from about 1989, 90 onwards was racing modified, and we chased the national scene pretty hard over those few years, and we really only started doing a little bit of on-road just for a bit of fun midweek, so there'd be a bit of Formula One racing on a Tuesday night World Championships in the car park at Fairfield Railway Station in Brisbane. People like Darren and Steve Perry, even back then, we were going head to head. And so we really just did on-road for a bit of fun. And then I took some time away and came back in around 2004, and off-road at that stage was pretty quiet. And we were, through Action RC and its predecessor business, we were selling Shoemaker cars, and so we got involved in running Shoemaker touring cars. So then got pretty into electric on-road for about the next 5 years. Really, electric off-road 10-scale is my kind of, that's where it all started for me. And that's, if you push me, four-wheel drive modified buggy is by far my favorite class to race. Those things are so fast, so much fun to drive, especially now where the horsepower is unlimited pretty much. And so that's where I'd go to when I get to choose. But I'll race anything.
Yeah. Travis just said surely it's going to be a 5-part series, so much history. Jeez.
I can talk for a long time, Travis. A long, long time. I'm a shy guy, but give me a microphone and set me free, and I'll be away.
Yeah. We're going to go through, I guess, on-road, and I'll ask the side a little bit more. I mean, personally, I actually remember purchasing, well, at least looking at purchase a vehicle from your old man, Heavy D, or David Guyatt. Along with my father. It was an on-road vehicle. It was I think a MI5, if I remember rightly, or it might have been an earlier model. This was quite a fair few years ago now. So what I actually want to know, what is your connection with Schumacher? Why has it always sort of generally been Schumacher vehicles?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends how much detail you want, right, Mitch? So if we want the full story, we went to the 1991 Nationals in Canberra, and at that stage in Queensland, everyone just raced one car, one class, and we all went off down to Canberra to race at this, a bunch of us for our first time traveling to this big race. And that event, Nationals 91, was kind of the start of a new era, really. You had a whole, breakthrough in terms of the event. Darren Campbell wins two-wheel drive. Michael Chard wins four-wheel drive. There's a new kind of young generation of drivers, people like David Crowe, and even a young Andrew Gillett is there. And we just rocked up with our two-wheel drive buggy, and then we borrowed a four-wheel drive buggy to kind of fill in the time. And while we're there, we really realized that if you're going to be serious about competing at that level, you kind of have to be racing both classes pretty seriously, and for the track time and the track knowledge and all of that. So we kind of came back and went, okay, we don't have the budget to run two cars. What can we do? And we reached out to Pitstop, who were the Australian Shoemaker importer, and said, we really want to run four drive. Is there anything we can do with a Pro Cat they were selling at the time? And they graciously said, yeah, we can help you. And, about 6 months after that, Shoemaker decided to kind of reinvigorate their Australian factory team. And so I just was in the right place at the right time. And they said, do you want to be a part of this team? So for the next 4 or 5 years, I drove with the Shoemaker factory team, with people like Ray Munday, Chris Premo, Grant Sorono, some of these people that are still around. Simon Camilleri was part of the team for a couple of years, then later on, Davey Crowe, Andrew Gillett, those sorts of people. So that's where the Shoemaker thing started. You know, we raced the cars. They're an engineering driven firm, and you know they've done some pretty quirky things over the years. If you pull apart an original cat, you just kind of go, how does Cecil Shoemaker's mind work? It's extraordinary. But we loved it. We loved the cars. We loved the way they worked, and we just enjoyed the relationship was really good with them over that period. So later on, when we started to retail, we kind of went back to them and said, you know, we really want to work with you guys again. And we're able to, you know, be a part of their retailing kind of arrangements in Australia. So then we were involved with them again, you know, for years and years while we were doing that kind of more retail-oriented side of things. So, yeah, starts a long time ago. Love the brand, love the people, have had good relationships with them. In the last 10 or 15 years, particularly, David's kind of, you know, built that relationship, and they've been really good to work with. So I have no relationship with them now. I just, you know, it's a good long-term history and a brand that I like. I like the way they go racing. So, yeah. That's a long answer to a short question, mate.
No, it's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So I have always wondered, you know, where that relationship comes from and that sort of side of things. And, you know, every time that we saw Heavy at the track, he would always have a Schumacher for sale. He would always have a Schumacher box and, you know, parts for Schumachers. And, you know, you'd ask him for a part and you'd, you know, whip out this massive, you know, tub of parts and you go, all right, that's going to take a while to find my part now. And he always had it pretty intricately organized as well. So.
And definitely in those later years, we rightly or wrongly kind of said we were not trying to be everything to everyone. We just wanted to pick the kind of brands that we had a good relationship with and sell and support and serve those brands. So that's, you know, Shoemaker for years, and particularly in that period where touring car was huge, right through from the early 2000s through kind of 2014 or whenever it was that I stopped racing. Touring car was the biggest class in Australia, and that's, you know, that, and Shoemaker had good cars that we liked, so that's why we stayed with them. Yeah.
Yep. That's roughly at the time that I started out with on-road, and over at Logan on-road, that was our first little race meeting with my old man, and absolutely loved it. You know, it was awesome fun.
It is good touring car, and I eventually stopped racing modified because it just got a bit too fast for me as I got older. But my goodness, there's nothing like a mod touring car. They are so fast, and even in that, you know, those early brushless times, and as we transitioned to lipo batteries and the cars just got faster and faster and faster, it's so much fun, so fast, so much fun. I wouldn't mind having a drive of a modern one because I haven't driven one for a few years, and that would be pretty fun. Yeah.
Actually, Steve Perry's just jumped on a Tuesday night Formula One. Sorry, Tuesday.
Oh, Steve, in your dreams, my friend, in your dreams. We all remember things differently. All right, Mitch, I'm gonna just tell you my Steve Perry story. We went to the 1993 Nationals. It was the first time that stadium truck was run at Australian Championships. First time Australian Championship was a 3-day event. Truck was put on the third day, so it was huge, right? There was 85 trucks or something like that. 350 entries in total, 85 trucks. All the mod guys and most of the stock guys raced truck. And Steve and I tied after the finals, and he won the Nationals on countback. And every Saturday morning now we go ride mountain bikes, and while we're having coffee afterwards, he reminds me about Illawarra 1993 and how he beat me on a countback, and he has the national title to prove. And there you go. So that's Steve got me. Yeah. And he reminds me every Saturday morning.
Jeez.
He's a legend. Steve's awesome. Steve's a great guy.
Question from Anthony there. What do you see as the biggest class at the moment? Is that, Anthony, are you referring to sort of on-road, off-road, or just in general?
I think it's really interesting at the moment, and it's really different in different parts of the country, right? So, you know, there's places, you know, in Melbourne, you'd probably say electric 10 scale, you know, with good, strong clubs in Knox and Keilor, particularly Keilor, you know, it's huge. In other parts of the country, 8 scale still strong. You know, but then if you go to Sydney, there's no 8-scale racing at all. So it's kind of feels to me like it's different in different places. You know, even where we are here in Southeast Queensland, there's only one 10-scale club, but it's really big. So there's 100 cars there every Sunday. 8-scale, there's many more clubs, and their level of competition is extraordinary, but the numbers probably in total are similar.
Electric buggy is strong here. Which is interesting because a lot of other states and majority of other clubs around Australia
Hmm.
struggle to get massive or decent numbers for electric buggy, and they certainly don't get electric truggy. Whereas we
Yeah.
seem to be
Yeah.
able to field, between 30 to 50 e-buggies at like most races, I'd say.
Yeah. Well,
Pretty
you go to a
easily.
Logan Clubby on a Saturday night, there'll be, 35,
Yep.
40, 45 electric buggies
Exactly.
and half
Which
a
is,
dozen maybe nitro. It's
yeah.
really interesting. Yeah.
So that's I guess that's mainly the 8 scale. Yeah, 10 scale. I think we'll see 10 scale get stronger over the next
Mm.
few months. I have
Yeah.
no doubt about that. And
I think there's a lot of people kind of going, as I am, going, home worlds in 2025. Is there
Yeah.
a 2-year project to kind of, for a bunch of stock guys to move to mod, a bunch of 8 scale guys to kind of go, all right, can I run some 10 scale and get a chance to run a worlds on home soil?
Yeah.
I think mod's going to be pretty awesome. Modified off-road is going to be pretty awesome next year.
Yeah.
Everywhere in the country. Yeah.
Yeah, any events that I'm not calling, I'm hoping to go to race, and that's also dependent on the partner.
Mate, just wear
how far I
a
can push it.
radio microphone. Just put a radio mic on, and you can call and race at the same time. I've offered that many times. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've actually been looking at them lately, and they're tempting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I'm looking forward to getting back into racing next year. I think it's going to be real, and you're real exciting.
Yeah.
A couple of bigger events. Obviously, to start the year off is going to be down in South Australia, and they're going to be racing on Astro. So that's
I
going to be
know. And as a shoemaker guy, I'm kind of looking at that going, sheesh, that could be a bit of fun. But
Yeah.
I think I'm actually going to be over in New Zealand for the Asian Buggy Champs race, which I
Right.
think is only around that same time, maybe a week or two before that. So I don't think I can get away for 2 trips. And the Queensland 8 scale off-road champs is also on in February at Logan. So there's a bit going on in February to try and fit that in. But yeah, state titles on Astro. That would be really interesting. Have you raced on Astro, Mitch?
Not an Astro, I don't believe. No, definitely not an Astro. Definitely raced on a carpet a fair few times. I've always enjoyed that. And sort of Astro, I know it's very popular over in the UK. And I actually went and visited a couple of Astro tracks whilst I was over there, but never got to actually drive on one. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I know the grip level is quite different to carpet. I know there's still a bit of slide in the tires, that sort of side of things, but it's probably a bit more of a consistent grip than, dirt tracks. Probably somewhat similar, I guess, to Chargers, but probably similar but different at the same time.
I know there are people, right, who are kind of, if it's not dirt, it's not off-road. But I actually think, I don't care what the surface is. If we're going to, like an Astro track, I reckon would be super fun. Consistent grip, as you say, as the pile moves a little bit, the car still moves around a little bit. And it's definitely some of those racetracks in the UK just look awesome. Some of those Astro tracks they get around on. I'd love to have a go. I don't think I'll make it to Adelaide.
That's sure it's a document. Chris just piping.
Trust Chris Schoenfish to know the every 80s cartoon reference. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, geez. So yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the South Australia titles. I know we've got a fairly strong group coming down from Southeast Queensland Charger sort of club, which we did last year as well, and we're going to back that up, I think, possibly even stronger this year. And the racing will be strong. Will be very strong, I'd say.
Yeah,
so it'll be really good to see. All right, so we've gone through a bit of your history, a couple of previous events, that sort of side of things as well. I know there'd be, as we've sort of talked about, there's endless amount of events we could probably talk about in the sort of side of things. Actually, one thing I do want to go through is I've noticed that almost every large event that I go to, there's just one little thing that sort of pops up and is like memorable, right? So say down in Sydney last weekend, the flies, right? There was flies absolutely everywhere. The heat was another thing. Like it was hot.
Yeah.
Over in Western Australia, I'd say it was a complete opposite. It was just cold. The freezing cold was just bewildering to me because I expected to go to Western Australia, it'd be hot. I didn't take a jumper. I was freezing cold the entire time. We went out to the drags one night. It was all of about 5 degrees and I almost froze to death. Worlds, it was the tires or once again the heat. There's always just at least one thing. Have you noticed that with large events yourself? There's always just one sort of memorable, whether it be like some that is irritating or just strange, just something goes on that you sort of think of it as, from this event that happened.
Yeah, there's always something that becomes the story of the race, right? And I, like, as soon as you say that, I'm just, the memories are firing off. And one of the memories that came straight away is the last time, I think it's the last time that the Electric On-Road Nationals were at Wayland, same place you were on the weekend, was 2009, and we were racing at that event, and we ran one of the qualifiers at night. I think it was the Saturday night or maybe the Friday night. And once the floodlights started up, the bugs started coming in, and I just distinctly remember standing on the driver's stand, with a touring car doing 100 k's an hour down the back straight, and some giant insect landing on my neck and hoeing in, having a bite. And all of us came off the driver's stand going, "That was insane." There's another race we did at Templestowe, Victorian Championships at Templestowe, and it was rain affected, maybe around the same year, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. Rain affected event, and we just got kind of late in the day, and the last round of touring car modified qualifying was run. It's pretty much dark, right? There's no floodlights there. There was just enough light to see, but all you could see was the flashing lights of the speed controls and the sparks coming off the screws on the bottom of the chassis as your car went down the back straight. And we were all slow because we couldn't see anything, but we all came off the driver's stand going, "It was so much fun." Like, to drive those cars that fast in the dark, just with sparks flying everywhere and lights flashing. And yeah, so you're right. Like, there's always something. There's always the rain. There's always, somebody doing something wrong, or someone, there's always a story that becomes the story of the race meeting. So yeah, there's millions of them that I would talk about. Yeah.
Actually, one of my favorites of all time actually came from down in Sydney this past weekend, and it was something that I'd like to know if you've ever seen before. Actually, we'll flash back even one further event. Over in Western Australia, we had a Willy Willy get whipped up. A Dust Devil, Little Tornado, they have so many different names. And it happened just off the side of the track, and it absolutely swept through this poor marshal. I was sitting there, got absolutely covered in dust. Not sure who the marshal was, but I felt bad for him. Anyway, move forward. Next event, we're down in Sydney for the on-road RCRA national titles. And this Willy Willy gets whipped up and goes across the timing loop. And I go, "Oh, there's, a little dust tornado." And it's something that you don't really think of ever happening. But the cars end up coming down the end of the straight into the last couple of corners as this Willy Willy came across and met them in the middle. And you would not believe the effect that the wind actually had on these cars. The cars were literally getting whipped from one side to the other as the wind went from one way. And it caused carnage, and you couldn't see it that well in the footage, but the whole crowd was cheering. I'm pretty sure if you're, there's not many times when you're in the driver's stand and you be, accepting a crash out of nowhere. But I feel as if a Willy Willy or a dust tornado or whatever came through and knocked you into a crash, you'd probably be like, "All right."
That's a bit beyond anyone's control, isn't it? But never seen a Willy Willy hit a racetrack.
All right. So you've never seen one.
Have seen a couple of driver stands collapse in the middle of a race. There's two famous incidents where that happened. One was in Toowoomba, just about an hour and a half west of Brisbane, and the whole stand just vertically collapsed. And it was about a 5 foot tall stand. And so the guys that were on it just essentially just surfed it to the ground. And then another, actually at Pine Hills, where up the top, where the baseball field is now, but one of the earlier venues of Pine Hills, it was a welded steel driver stand about 3 foot high, and the whole thing wasn't attached to the ground. So the wind came from behind, and the thing literally just tipped over forward onto the front straight. So there's a couple of, that's not quite Willy Willy, but pretty interesting to watch a driver stand collapse in the middle of a race.
Yeah,
maybe the rules around construction are a little bit more stringent now than they were back in the 80s. Yeah.
Well, is everyone all right?
That's terrible. I wasn't. Yeah, nobody. One guy got a scratch on the back of his leg. I think everyone was okay. I wasn't on the driver's stand for either of them.
Yeah, right.
Just happened to kind of be there watching.
I'd love to know if Steve Perry or any of the boys were actually. Yeah, here we go. Steve's just jumped in. Yes, Pine Hills blew over. I was marshalling. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I've never heard any of these stories. That's incredible. That is absolutely unbelievable to hear, and it makes me even more skeptical about going up onto Logan's tall driver stand now.
The driver stand you do have to just be a little bit cautious of is, can we say this in public? But the Miriam Vale driver stand from the 90s was a famously rickety affair. And I understand the guys are back racing at Miriam Vale, and if you ever get a chance to race there, they build the most incredible racetracks. Tiny little town about 5 hours north of Brisbane. But I've heard that the driver's stand is still the same one from the early 90s. So hopefully they've strengthened it up a little bit, because I do remember it kind of wobbling as you climb the stairs. No, I'm sure it's much better now, but yeah. there's plenty of stories like that, and if you keep
Yeah.
Steve Perry and I here long enough, you'll get most of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that is incredible. No, I've never even thought about a driver's stand falling on me, so that's just an added extra to think about.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to the Action RC podcast because this is, probably one of the most, things you're well known for, at least, probably out of Australia. I'd say there'd be a significant amount of viewers worldwide at this stage. You've been running it for a significant amount of time. What actually made you start it up? What you, behind the microphone?
So there was a couple of things to say, right? So one of them is, Mitch, that, and I've said this lots in lots of different forums. One of the things I love about RC is that there are so many different ways to enjoy it. There are some guys who just love building beautiful cars and painting and having them be perfectly prepared. There are some who just love hanging out with their mates in the pits. Some who love traveling. Some who love the heat of competition, that wheel to wheel kind of action. Some who love self-improvement. I love racing wheel to wheel. That's the thing for me. But equally, I love storytelling. So about RC, and so I've for years have written in magazines and done newsletters and all that kind of stuff. I spent 20 odd years writing for Racing Lines magazine, and like race reviews and product reviews and opinion columns, and that's just part of how I enjoyed the sport. And podcasting is for me, and commentary, both of those things are just an extension of that for me. So spent, as I said, a few years in Tassie, and really just got in the groove there of doing lots of stuff on the microphone and on their website, and then did what you're doing now. Had the chance to commentate at some nationals and things like that, and loved that. And then as podcasting became pretty accessible, that kind of just became, well, here's another way to tell stories. And I'm interested in the little stories, the individual stories. And so when you have a guy like, let's say, Joel Johnson, on the show, and you can ask Joel, tell me about that, that Kyosho Ultima in the 1987 World Championships, and you can get that little story. But I'm also interested in the big story of RC, the way the sport develops and changes and grows and has done over, 45, whatever it is, years now. And so then, we were sitting around in this little period called COVID, kind of just, we're all rebuilding old cars and reading old magazines and anything to pass the time, right? I'm sure we all remember that. And, this notion of an RC podcast had been just kind of bouncing around for me for a long time. And so we kind of at that stage went, all right, let's do it. And let's do it in a way that is about capturing the kind of that long story of the sport. And so the first series was really about chatting with people in Australia who are what we might call the legends of the sport, the people who have been around for a long time, and getting their own personal story in quite a lot of detail, but also the way they've seen the sport change. So, people like Lou Sola. Lou was the first guest on the show, right back episode number 1. Stephen Darren Perry, Ray Monday, Andrew Gillett, these kinds of people who've been around the sport for a long time in Australia. And it just kind of, I had a great time doing it, and people seemed to really enjoy listening to it. And so in that period where we all were desperate for anything to watch or listen to.
Yep.
And so it went from there. That first series, I tend to kind of do them in seasons of around about 15 to 20 episodes now, and then, life gets in the way and you run out of time. And the way that I'd like to do it is to be really, really well prepared. So if I'm going to talk to someone like Joel Johnson, I want to know, as much about his story as I can before we start chatting.
Yeah.
So I can't just kind of bang out an episode every week. There are plenty of podcasts around the world that do that, and they reflect on last week's race, and they're fun, and I love listening to them. My kind of thing is to, go a bit deeper. So yeah, the second season was a bit the same, except we started to go internationally then. So, people like Joel came and joined me on the show, Scotty Ernst, all sorts of people from all around the world were, some of the British guys, Craig Drescher, were very gracious to come and, join me on Zoom on weird hours of the morning or evening for them. So that's how it started. That's kind of where it's up to. And really that's the purpose of it from my point of view, is what's the big story? And let's encounter the big story through lots of little stories, little funny things that happened, key moments in the history of the sport. Some significant race meeting where, somebody came out of nowhere and made a name for themselves, or some new car was released, all that kind of stuff. I'm interested in those kinds of things, and that's where I take the podcast. The Action RC part of it that's the name that we had it in our retail business that, my dad, David, ran for many years. And so it just was a name that we had floating around, so we kind of decided to keep using the name. So just finished our second season, kind of middle of the year, and then ran into my professional working life has been a bit up and all over the place this year. I'm changing careers, and so just needed to take some time away from it to kind of settle a few things in. But I'm probably not too far away from diving back in, and hopefully we'll have a third season coming, sort of starting off sometime over the summer, and we'll see where we go. I love it. I really have fun doing it. And people are kind enough to listen and to send through their kind of comments and thoughts and encourage you to keep going, as you'd be experiencing that as well. People enjoy listening along, and it sparks lots of memories and stories, and that's kind of how it's been.
No, exactly. No, it definitely. No, whether you're trying to do it for sort of, I guess, an improvement of the hobby, which I think we both are, or just do it as a sort of a time killer in a way, just to fill some stuff in. I feel as if it is just sort of a good way to express your love of the hobby. But
I was just going to say, I think you said something really interesting just there, and that is that if whether you and I do what we do for the improvement of the hobby, but I reckon this would be the same for you. I was actually sitting on the deck with my wife last night saying, for 40 years I have loved this hobby, and sometimes it gets a bit annoying and you stop and you go away for a while, but there's something about it that I just love it. I love racing. I love the people that I've met over the years, and I said earlier, go mountain biking with Steve Perry and Darren and, others, Mark and Brett Farrenprice and Anthony Atake, and all these guys I met through RC. So that have these lifelong friendships. And I want RC to be awesome. So if there's something I can do, and I reckon you're the same, if there's something I can do to help people enjoy it more, to help it be better organized, or to, just remember some of the fun stories from its past, that is just entertaining. I want RC to be awesome. I want the clubs I'm involved in to be awesome. And if there's a little contribution I can make to help make it a fun, exciting, interesting kind of pastime for people, then I'm all in. That's kind of how I see it. And I reckon you'd be the same.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, mate, you got me going there.
No, exactly. We've got a heap of comments, actually. It's the most comments I've ever seen. So we're doing something right. We're talking about the right subjects. Actually, a couple for you as well, I'd say here. So you're coming to the New Zealand. You coming to New Zealand for the first round of Philippine Masters?
So I'm hoping to be. I'm hoping to be in New Zealand and in the Philippines for that event for the Philippines Masters in April, working with Scotty and the team. So that we're just kind of working on the details, but I'm really hoping to be. I loved working with Scotty and the RC Race Media crew. You've worked with them. Tony and Matt, they're just awesome. And I think they're doing some of that coverage as well. And I loved working with them and with the two kind of juniors of the team. We won't go naming these, young 16, 17-year-old Nitro on-road drivers from Sydney who were there as part of the crew as well. Yes, we will. No, we won't. No. So I'm hoping to be a part of the crew over there in New Zealand. Never raced in New Zealand. Have ridden my bike there, but I won't be racing if I'm there. I'll just be helping to kind of tell the story of the event, and I'm really excited about it already. And Philippines, if everything works out, if it, there's always things that don't work out, and that's fine if they don't, but I'm hoping to be there helping along the sidelines.
I'd love to at least get to possibly one of the overseas events, but we'll see how we go. And New Zealand will probably be the best bet.
You raced, right? You raced at ABC in Brisbane, and it was a fantastic weekend, super fun, incredibly tight, competitive racing, great racetrack, but a really good environment. And if there are people in New Zealand listening, or if there are people in Australia who are thinking about a race to go to, that race in New Zealand in February, which I think they sold 120 entries in the first hour or something, like crazy. Or the Philippines Masters, those two races will be awesome. And I know there are a bunch of Aussies going to both of those, so hopefully we might get some from other parts of Asia, or maybe even other parts of the world, to some of those races. So
with any
luck, really fun.
I know I've banged on about it in the past, but racing in New Zealand is just awesome. I know you haven't done it yourself, but racing in New Zealand, they have such passion over there about the hobby as well. I think from what the mod media guys over the world were saying, they were saying the Aussies were the most passionate people on their comments and stuff. They were commenting like crazy, saying, follow this guy, and all Aussie guys pretty much the whole time. They said they were just getting loaded with comments from Aussies. Where I think New Zealand is
You think New Zealand?
Yeah, next step again. But the only difference is they probably just don't have the population to beat us over here. So
yeah, I can't wait. It'll be really fun. And I've heard lots of good things about racing in New Zealand, and I've had a look at some video and bits and pieces from that racetrack. Counties looks awesome. Looks like it'll be really fun to watch. And and there's some guns, like there's some real talent in New Zealand. And so when you bring some of the best of Australia and the best of New Zealand to go head to head, what's not to look forward to about February, right? That's it's going to be awesome.
I think one to beat over there will be Jaden Jameson. He is super quick. He's a super quick Kiwi kid. He's going to be somewhat home territory, I'd say, at least.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what his home track is, if it's counties, and he's going to be super hard to beat.
No Kiwi is going to want any Australian to come over there and win a race, right? So Jaden, and the boys and girls, they're all going to be like, no, this is our house.
They probably have their backs up.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, they'll have their backs up after the New Zealand Nationals, because I'm pretty sure Parsi and Caleb went over there for the New Zealand Nationals, and I think we collected a couple of trophies off them for that event. So
I think they might have. Yeah. There might be revenge.
A couple more comments as well. I'm going to try and get through them. Chris Rundfish says Australian magazines are a thing of the past. I remember waiting for racing lines to come in the mail. I guess phased out due to what we're using now, realistically.
It's just different, isn't it? Yeah, I do lament it a bit because I'm a words guy, right? Like I'm happy. I really enjoy podcasting, happy to do this kind of thing, but I also love crafting a story, on paper. So, I loved writing for the magazine, and particularly writing opinion pieces, which we did for about 10 years, every month for 10 years, and, an opinion about something. But it is just the way the world is. So, I lament the passing of the magazine, but I love what we're doing now. It's different, yeah. But you're right, Chris. It was always fun to wait and watch.
Yeah. Andrew Ford, Scotty kicked my ass, and EP and Tassie on here.
Yeah, one time, Andrew, in all of the ever time we've ever met. It's like 100-1 is the score. I got him that one time. Yeah,
there's that one time he'll lament for life.
Yeah, that's right. And a bit like Steve Perry in 1993, I will remind Andrew of that every time I see him. Can you remember 2010 in Tasmania?
G'day, Sam. Thanks for joining in as well.
What's happening in Orange? Is there racing in Orange at the moment? I've a bit lost track of what's happening in Orange.
I think Orange has their own racetrack. I'm pretty sure.
Drop us a note, Sam. Tell us what's going on in Orange. Yeah,
let us know what's going on in Orange. I'm pretty sure I saw they have a track down there, or it either recently reopened or I recently started reposting on it. I can't remember, but I'm pretty certain. But yeah, it'd be good for Sam to come back and let us all know.
The racetracks in the smaller country or regional communities are often just awesome. And the community support. So places like Albury Wodonga and in Queensland, we know kind of racetracks that have been amazing. Miriamvale's one I mentioned earlier, that grade 8 scale track in Tassie up at Devonport. There's lots of examples of incredible racetracks in little tiny towns. Oh, there we go. On road and off road. That's awesome to hear.
Perfect.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you as well. Like quite often you'll see the small country towns and stuff that have that pure love for the hobby as well. Because a lot of the small country towns, like Toowoomba especially, have such a racing background. The Toowoomba Speedway, motocross, that sort of side of things. And when you have a little town that has that love of racing, and you have to have a budget version of it, and then RC pops on in, that's a perfect
budget version. Yeah, right.
Yep. Semi-budget.
I know. Yeah, I've been a part of a motorsport family. I know what real race car budgets are. Full size race car budgets are.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to total your spendings from a single year of competition racing?
Absolutely not. Don't ever do it. Don't go there. There's no good can come from that kind of thinking process. Look, it at the time when we were really serious about it, and from that sort of 91 through about 96, 97, like I said, we kind of chased pretty hard around the country and went to lots of races. And I do remember this is in the era of open tyre, right? So I do remember one time going to a state champs in Nationals. It was, we drove down to Melbourne to race 1994 at Templestowe. kilo, and counting the number of tires we had in the car for two of us to run 3 classes in it. We were very fortunate to have some sponsors who let us just take a bunch of stuff, to use if we used it and then return it. But the amount of money that went on that trip, and if you'd had to buy it all retail, would have been unbelievable. So, no, don't do it. Like Josh Payne just said in the comments, don't ever do it. Just don't do it to yourself, and don't let your family find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
No.
big news from Steve Perry right there. So let me just
Yeah.
make a comment about that. The end of season event for Chargers, this, Mitch, the end of season event for Chargers is
Yes.
coming up. Traditionally has been this endurance race, and there's some pretty big teams being put together for this year's race. I don't know whether to let me go with the national exclusive right now. So the team that I was a part of last year, we were led by David Giddinelli. Unfortunately, David can't race this year, so we've had to go searching for a replacement to join Keith Mackerel and Jason Dawn and myself. And just today, the ink's been dried on a contract to have Darren Perry coming back on the 1/10 scale track for the first time in quite a long time. He's won so many state championships, it's impossible to remember. We would have had Steve as well, but we only had room for one.
Yep.
So we've got our team together. I'm pretty sure you'll be part of a team for that, or a sought after member, or you're not going to make it. What's the story?
So
What's that grimace about?
Yeah, so we only just sort of worked out that there was unfortunately quite a big date clash going on.
No.
Yes, we have our group chat and all that sort of things, and I popped in there after I found out the date of it, which we're guessing is the 9th of December. Has it actually?
I think that's right. Yeah, that's Saturday night. Yeah,
we believe
that's what's
so.
on the Chargers calendar. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my boss happened to not see that potentially and book in our Christmas party for that exact date. So
you can have the work Christmas party at Carroll Park beside the racetrack. It'll be fine.
Look,
no.
As good of an idea as that is, and as bad of a time at driving it would have been with the excessive amount of liquids that we'd probably end up drinking, unfortunately, we won't be there. So it's a bit of a shame.
It is.
Both myself and Dom were looking forward to that, but yes.
It's worth saying, isn't it, that as well as the serious racing that we all do and we all love, these kinds of races, and we've done 6-hour touring car enduros, and we've done races in shopping centre malls, and everyone's done those kinds of things, and they're also part of what makes RC awesome. And particularly Chargers, everyone around Australia knows about that club and the just wonderful state that it's in, and the awesome group of people that are leading that club at the moment, and building on all of its history and all of the people that have come before. And so there's a kind of a really lovely thing about gathering for a day like that. Our team will be there to win it, but actually we really don't care, if I'm honest. We'll be there to have a good time and sledge a bit and have a bit of fun. And it's a really nice way to end a competition season. And I think it comes like a week after the Queensland Champs, so it'll be all serious Queensland Champs, and then the next weekend all kinds of crazy shenanigans, 2-hour enduro race, bit of fun, some pizzas and drinks, and a really good way to finish the season. So, it's been my 3rd year in that enduro. I'm really looking forward to getting back there for it. It's a fun race.
Where did your team finish last year?
We won the race by 17 laps, Mitch.
That's right.
So we went all right last year. There was some good competition. We had I saw Peter Eggleton comment pop up a moment ago, and Phoenix led his team away, and we all know the Phoenix Eggleton story of how rapidly he's turning into one of the best young talents in the country, and he led the first half an hour away for his team at the enduro last year, and he was serving it up to us, and we were kind of going, we could be in trouble here. But we had a really strong team, and we were able to just kind of consistently eke out the laps. And that's, if we break down an endurance race, that's what wins endurance races. And we do break down the endurance race. I won't share with you the statistical analysis we do after the race of average lap times for each driver for each stint and all of that kind of stuff. No, it's going to be a great fun weekend, and really looking forward to being there, and very much so now that I know I'm going to be up against Steve Perry. Hopefully he and I will be on track for the same stint, so that we can go head to head. That'd be awesome.
How much to miss Dom's Xmas party, Chris? you'll have to pay me a lot.
So does that mean Chris's team is one driver short? Is that what we're hearing? Were you going to be on the
I won't
sturdy
speculate
AE team?
on. I won't
Okay.
speculate. I won't speculate about any contracts at all.
But anyone wanting to get a start, perhaps you could shoot a CV through to chrissturdy@hotmail.com.
Yep.
No, I made that email address up, by the way, so don't do that.
You can call them on 046.
555. Yeah. No, I love those
Uh,
races. They're really fun, and that'll be a really fun way to wrap up 2023. And yeah, with that, I can't say enough, how awesome it is to see that club going from strength to strength. And there are other clubs around the country, that are doing likewise. And there's nothing better than seeing just great people, giving of themselves. And I love the volunteerism that's part of the sport in Australia, different in different parts of the world. But here it's a club sport essentially. And Chargers is a really good example of a club, going really well. But there's, on any given Saturday or Sunday or Wednesday night, all over the country, there's people just doing amazing things to put on races, and that's fantastic. It's awesome. Yeah.
All right. We got a little bit sidetracked there. I would say
we did.
about
Sorry.
20 minutes sidetracked. Perfect. Okay, back to the Action RC podcast and Action RC in general. Do you actually have a favorite episode or favorite chat that you had, or you just sort of brought across just happy with,
Oh no, like I actually think they're all really interesting. I think every conversation that I've had. So, how deep to go here, Mitch? But one of my kind of philosophies, if you like, or outlook on life is that if you chat with someone for long enough and you ask the right questions, everyone's got a story. And I, the smile's gone from my face, but I genuinely mean that. I think everyone has a story, and I've been fortunate to have people who have joined me on the show and who were happy to share their story. And generally what happens is I send out a pretty comprehensive set of notes beforehand. And so the person that's coming, even if we've not actually met, has some confidence that, I've done the work to kind of prepare well. And, so it's always good. I've loved chatting with people like Jamie Booth and Craig Drescher. And Marshy, I'm lining you up for a special episode, mate. Jared Tebow kind of joined me just the week after he announced he was retiring. And so those kinds of, those kinds of very famous names have been awesome. Had a chat with Peter Winton not so long ago, who's been involved in the administration side of the sport at World Championships all over the place. That was awesome. Darren Johnson, we talked about the four most famous kind of four-wheel drive buggies of all time, and that was really interesting. So I find all of them pretty fun. I'd say I did particularly enjoy having Steve and Darren Perry on the show because it's brotherly love is this kind of really funny thing. And so I love seeing those guys together. But yeah, no, everyone's been great. Some are a little bit harder than others. You've just got to work a little bit harder to kind of make the connection. But that's the nature of conversation. But yeah, I'm not going to pick a favorite. I'd go back to episode 1 and listen to them all. No, just go and have a look and have a listen. And I love them all. And I deeply appreciate the generosity of people with their time saying, I don't know this weirdo from Australia, but I'll give you a couple of hours to kind of have a chat. So deep down, we all just love talking about toy cars. So
for sure. No, I've listened to many of the episodes, and I'm once again working my way back in through it as well. And some of them are just incredible. The Painey episode was incredibly funny.
Josh was good.
Scotty Ernst and stuff when you had him on there, and as you said just before, the Jared Tebow episode, as he just announced his retirement, and listening to his past, his upbringing, and that sort of side of thing was just really incredible, like in-depth conversation of pretty much his life and how he sort of transformed into an incredible racer. And
it is. So, you have reminded me that it's hard to go past the Josh Payne Thailand tuk-tuk story. So if you've not heard that story from Josh firsthand or not listened to that episode, go find Action RC wherever you listen to podcasts and find the Josh Payne episode and listen to Josh tell that story from the tuk-tuk on the freeway in Thailand, and particularly what happened afterwards in Mike Reedy's hotel room. No spoilers.
No spoilers.
And we all know and love Josh. He's a great character of the sport globally, but particularly in Australia. And Josh was awesome to join me for a chat and tell some stories. Yeah.
Yeah, and he actually joined us over at the World Titles only a couple of weeks back, and he
Yeah,
had an
that's awesome to see
exceptional lead up.
him and
Plenty
Andrew
of
have a good time over there.
Plenty of warm up to the event. That was great to see. Many a drinks had. No, it was epic to see them having a run, and
I
it
did
looked like
love the
they
social
enjoyed
media
themselves.
feed of you guys at racetracks in California practicing while Josh and Andrew were on mountain bikes in Nevada,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
wherever they were. I don't know where they were,
yeah.
but
They
it
were
was
in
a slightly different
forgotten the name
preparation.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, and to be honest, I was extremely jealous of what they were doing.
Yeah, so was I.
So
Wanted to be riding with them and racing at the Worlds, or to be at the Worlds, but
yeah.
not to be. Yeah.
Geez, yes, many a memories from the US, many a good ones, the occasional rough one. Okay, flicking on over. Let's jump into recent events. There's been some major events that you've actually been to recently. Predominantly, actually, you've been in charge of one major event, which would be the Vintage Bash.
I would not say in charge of.
In charge, race calling at least.
Yeah.
You've
No,
been a part of it, I would say.
Yeah, so the Vintage Bash crew, and I'm sure everyone's heard of it, but it's popped up out of nowhere over the last 2 years. There's a bunch of kind of reprobates in Victoria, led initially by Tony Gray, Lou Solar, Aaron Defina, now Andy Cook, Scotty Giles. Put on this event, which was their vision for it really, and I love it. I'm all in. It's a celebration of the kind of heritage of the sport. So people and cars and kind of historic race venues as well. So both, last year at Keilor and this year at Knox, two of the club tracks in Australia that have been around forever, racing cars that have been around forever, driven by people that have been around forever, and just having a good time. So their mantra really has been that it's not about who wins the race on the Sunday afternoon, and actually we really don't care if you win the A final. Good for you, bragging rights, but nobody cares. We just want everyone there to have a good time. Now, racers being racers, that's not always strictly true, of course. Once we get to finals time, the eyes are on. But yeah, so they started last year. They had a kind of rain-affected single-day event last year, and this year went 2 days and well over 200 entries. Just a really fantastic environment, great atmosphere, lots of, just the kind of cars you've not seen forever. And yeah, it was awesome to be a part of.
I'll try and grab this compilation up. This might.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this is where things would go wrong if things are going to go wrong. So let's try and chuck this in. There we go. So we'll let that play as we sort of talk on as well.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, from the outside point on, outside looking in, it looked like an epic event. The cars, as you say, just, incredible condition for a lot of their ages and stuff. The age of some of these cars being between 30 to 40 years old sometimes. And just
nearly almost 40-year-old cars there. Yeah.
So it looked like an awesome event. And I know, once again, my boss, Dom Blackman, he went down for it. And Dom's been racing a fair few years. And I would say all of probably about 2 months ago, he had a drive of a vintage car. And he came to work the next day and said, I have no interest in vintage, not an ounce in my body. It was not enjoyable. And then all of a sudden, it only happened about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He comes back into work and goes, I bought myself a vintage car. I'm going to go down to the Vintage Bash. I'm not going to go over to the Australian National Titles, which is happening the exact same weekend. I'm going to go down to Victoria and race the Vintage Bash. And, everything that he's shown me, like, he had the best time. It's not the sort of event where you're busting to try and make the A main or that sort of side of things. You're still there to be a bit competitive, but it's just an enjoyable atmosphere.
Dom was good.
Yeah,
it was awesome. I think it is worth saying, like, it was a shame that it was on the same weekend as the Nationals, and like it is circumstance, right? The Bash dates were announced at the start of the year. That Nationals, the club trying to put deliberately trying to put the event on back to back with the 8 scale off road Nationals, and like it just is what it is. It's a shame. But there probably weren't that many people who were forced to choose. Some of the fast Victorians were at the Bash, but couldn't have gone to the Nationals anyway because of school exams and uni exams. So it's a shame. But while we're at Knox, we were keeping a pretty close eye on the Nationals results and the 8 scale Worlds, which was on at the same time on road.
Yep.
But yeah, it was good. It was good. So I mean, effectively the race, and you can see, the track, and you can see the pits there on screen. The pits were buzzing from Friday morning as people started rolling in, and the format of the event was pretty simple. It was practice Friday. We started off into some qualifying on Friday afternoon, and then finished off in two-wheel drive. Finished off two-wheel drive quali and the finals on Saturday, and then started into four-wheel drive and wrapped up about 3:00 Sunday afternoon. Somewhere up over 200 cars. The Knox Club were gracious hosts. Like you've never seen a man work harder than Neil Kovacs. But a whole merry band of helpers who just pitched in and ran barbecues, and people were driving from hours away to help on the barbecue or to jump on the microphone when I was doing other things. And the Big Show, Simon Ryan, I think is his name. The Big Show is what everyone knows him as. Was there to jump on, and it was a really. I've said lots of times before, I love like big races that are like a celebration of the sport. So I think every national titles is a celebration of the sport, but this really was that. It was a celebration of the sport, and some of the cars were old, some of them were re-released, but it didn't matter. And the post-race kind of, hand the transmitter around sessions were every bit as good and as much fun as the actual racing themselves. It was awesome. Yeah. What do you want to know? What can I tell you about? I could talk for a long time about the vintage.
Yeah, I mean, I got to see at least a bit of the vintage racing at the carnival, but from a standpoint of myself, I've only been racing off-road at least for the better part of the last, I'd say 6 to 8 years. So my knowledge of the actual anything from realistically rear motors, I wouldn't have a single clue about. The first buggy I drove was a B5M, and it was just released after the B5 turned to a mid-mount rather than it just being a rear mount. So the actual cars themselves, I mean, a lot of people seem to think, or seem to say at least, that the lap times were quite comparable to what a modern car would be able to do. It probably wouldn't be competitive in like a nationals perspective, but somewhat competitive at least, on a club day, say, fun laps and that sort of side of things. So
yeah, I think, there's like one of the best things that's happened is, people like Kyosho, Tamiya, Shoemaker Associated, re-releasing these old buggies. So, the cars, the designs are the same, but the plastics are modern, and there's often little changes to make the transmission more robust or those kinds of things. And I think if you took any of those competition-oriented re-release cars, say something like the Mid Optima from Kyosho, you could be competitive on a club kind of, a club day reasonably. You're probably not going to win, but you'd get around all right. I guess the real challenge of a lot of these cars, and the two-wheel drive in particular, is that the style of driving now is so different with, mid-motor cars and generally more high grip surfaces that we're racing on, and very different tire technology. And so that, to drive a rear motor, 1990s vintage kind of two-wheel drive buggy on a modern high grip surface, they're going to get to be a bit of a handful pretty fast. So, we're running some of these cars at Chargers in the outlaw class, the rear motor buggies, and they get around. But really, if push comes to shove, the modern, there's a reason why, cars are fast, and that's the years and years of development that go into them. So you could definitely have some fun. The slipperier the track, probably the closer you would be. But on a modern high grip surface, you can't bring an old, Warhorse designed for slippery, dusty, bumpy tracks with Frewer mini pin tires from 1989 and compete with a modern race car. That's just not going to happen. But it's also not what it's about. I think one of the things I would say that ties into that is that running at Chargers, Chargers, for those who've not seen it, Chargers is very fortunate to have a really great supportive local council and have got enough space to build a second racetrack alongside the main track. And it's a small track at the moment, but it's about to expand, and it's a vintage friendly, I know you know this, Mitch, but for others that are listening, it's vintage friendly. So it's just dirt. There's no treatment to it. The jumps are small. It's really slippery and loose and bumpy, and it's very much like an 80s kind of old school track. And it does remind me that, driving a car, that racing's really different when the track is really slippery and rough and bumpy. And that's, you can be doing different things with the race car than you can do, over on the main high grip racetrack at Chargers. One's not better or worse. It's just really different. And Knox was a bit like that. It's Knox you'd call a kind of medium traction track, loose in places, lots of bumps, and driving those cars in a way that it's quite different to how you drive a modern car. I didn't race, but I got to have a few little steers, and it was like, it was awesome. It's like muscle memory comes back. I know how to drive a 1992 Schumacher Cougar 2. Yeah, it's different, different to drive, fun, really fun, and it kind of does remind me that racing on loose, slippery tracks, as I say, is a very different kind of challenge, which maybe we don't do quite so much in 10 scale these days. We still do it a bit in 8 scale, and that's different again.
Yeah. It's an interesting point that actually as well. I think a lot of 10 scale tracks have sort of gone away from it a lot because of just general maintenance, that sort of side of things. But also probably because the cars aren't quite as suited to it as what they are realistically with a higher grip level track. So I mean, we still have Logan in the southeast Queensland region, which, I mean, they don't realistically race 10 scale all that much, if ever, at the moment at least. I'd like to see that potentially change again in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. It'd be great to see a 10 scalers run around there again, but you never know. But yeah, it does feel like there has been a bit of a drop off in that sort of low grip, dusty sort of tracks. And I guess it's good that we're going up to Sunny Coast in 2 weeks to run on those exact conditions realistically.
That Queensland Championship race that you're talking about is going to be really interesting to see who can make, and a lot of the guys that'll be racing won't have driven 10 scale on a slippery track before, so they'll be trying to make the cars work in a very different environment to
challenging
for many people, normally racing at, say, Chargers, for example, or racing 8 scale cars, which work very differently. It'll be really interesting to see who figures it out. Who can make the cars work and who can get their head around how to drive the things fast in those conditions.
Are you going to attend that one? Are we going to see your presence up there?
I don't think I can get there. I've got a few too many things that I'm juggling in December, so I think I'm pretty sure I'm going to make it to the Enduro the week after, but I won't. If I'd sneak up for a little bit, maybe, but I won't be racing.
Fair enough.
Tempting to try and find a rear motor two-wheel drive and see what you could do, but I probably won't. Like that one right there on screen. See that car, the Team Losi JRX2. So one of the great things about the Bash, if I drag us back there for a moment, is seeing these hallmark cars that marked a turning point in the sport, right? So that one we were just looking at, the Losi JRX2, comes out in 1988, early 89, and it sets on fire the Team Losi v Associated kind of battle that has been a hallmark of the sport all over the world for the next 30 years. That's the car. Like, that is actually the car that set that Team Associated v Losi kind of fight going. And away it went. And so it was awesome to be at the Bash last weekend and be able to say, look, that's the car that set that kind of going. Or the Yokomo from the 89 World Championships, the YZ870, that set the kind of chassis design benchmark for four-wheel drive for the next 10 years. That was the car that changed four-wheel drive racing. You went away from, say, the Shoemaker enclosed belt cars from before, or the Mid-Optima, to this kind of chassis design and layout that then just stuck around and every manufacturer adopted it. So it's kind of nice to see. And that's one of the things I loved about the Bash, is being able to go, all right, see, that car made this difference to the sport and led to where we are today because of X, Y, and Z. So that's, another part of what I loved about being there, was being able to spot all those cars. And sometimes in the same race, you'd have 3 or 4 generations of Losi two-wheel drives in the same race, or Shoemaker four-wheel drives. And you can see the progression of design and development. And this is getting very serious now, isn't it, Mitch? I should stop. But yeah, that's one of the things I loved about it.
No, it's good. It's
Sorry,
good.
got me going.
The good thing is that you've actually had that sort of, you've been through the history of the hobby, so you have the knowledge of
Yes,
a
I
lot
am
of
old.
the cars.
Yes, I am old. That's right.
Get out of here. But yeah, the actual knowledge of the actual hobby, when it comes through the cars, you've been able to see the cars evolve as they've sort of, come through the ages, the different cars as they've sort of risen to the top of the I guess the pecking order, and then probably slowly drop back down whilst another brand shot to the top, and it's sort of chopping and changing over the years. And I mean, I feel as if we're in a bit of an associated dominance era at the moment, with a lot of big name AE drivers taking the top wins, but then again, the Losi was strong in the two-wheel drive, which was probably somewhat unexpected. So
Cougar LD3. Come on, we've got to get Shoemaker back on the off-road scene in Australia. That's what I want to see happen next year.
I got to admit, I don't know if I actually mentioned this on the stream or not yet, but I had a drive of Luke Prattley's Schumacher vehicles, and he had some of the upgrade parts, but this wasn't until this was pre-upgrade parts, and I had to drive his car at SDRC, and I actually felt extremely comfortable from first laps driving that car. I felt like a very, very stable car, the sort of car you could just drive out of the box.
Yeah.
So I was quite surprised because previous
they're
Schumacher
good.
cars, I've been a little bit sort of struggling to find a decent balance between extreme front end traction and a really heavily rotating rear end. So it feels as if they've sort of really worked their magic on the latest cars. So
this is one of the things, right? And you just pointed to it. So right now, you would honestly say, Associated have been in the ascendance over the last couple of years, but you've got. This is the big story of RC. It's always changing. So you've got S-Works coming, so strong in 8 scale in particular, but also 10 scale. X-Ray kind of, Losi, Yokomo are still bouncing around with and they've got some new cars. Shoemaker over the last 5 years, I guess you'd say, have, been really reinvigorated from an engineering perspective. And so their cars are coming along really strong. Like this and I can imagine that the balance is going to shift a little bit. And who knows which way between now and when the Worlds happens in 2025. And that's going to be a story that I'm going to be really watching closely, is to see how the balance of power shifts in terms of chassis design, but also teams. So in Australia right now, Associated has by far the strongest team in off-road. Probably X-Ray have some good drivers. X-Ray do have some very good drivers as well. And there's not too many people in modified, I'm only speaking modified here, running those other chassis, but maybe we'll see that shift a little bit over the next 18 months to 24 months as we see. And there's Chris Shanefish. Mugen got that 2-wheel drive coming out, and if they come out with that, you would think a 4-wheel drive will be there. Serpent are still floating around. Like there's all sorts of brands. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the balance might shift, and whether anyone can really take it to Associated in a week in, week out kind of sense, because their cars are very good and their system's very good and their team's very strong, and that's a whole thing that's hard to kind of topple. There's a lot more to winning races than just having a good car, and they've got it all at the moment. Getting distracted.
No, I want to follow along with that as well, actually. Talking about the 2025 Worlds and potential power switch or balance switch and that sort of side of things, from what it sounds like, from everything that I'm sort of hearing, it is sounding more and more likely that it'll be held down at Sydney, which is generally speaking a low grip to maybe a medium grip track once it grooves on up. So quite a different sort of grip. It'll be a completely different tire to what this current year's world titles was. It'll most likely be quite a big pin tire, a whole shot or a Jetco pin tire, that sort of side of things. So it'll be interesting to see what car can come out, as you mentioned there, on top when it comes to the transformation in the two different tracks. It's a completely different racing style to what America has. It's a completely different racing style to what Europe has. Australia is so unique with our racing style nowadays than what it was, say, 20 years ago, where a lot of tracks back 20 years ago probably were just all run on dirt. You go from one dirt track, it might be a red clay. You go to another dirt track, it's a sandy dirt, whereas nowadays US are driving indoors, hard packed clay, goop, UK, Europe, AstroTurf. So it'll be interesting to see how they sort of mold their cars to work around our tracks.
I'm wondering whether this might, and only history will be able to answer this question, whether this might turn out to be the last outdoor dirt track 10 scale world championships. Like it, everyone after this might well be indoor and or artificial surface and or treated kind of, as we saw just this year just gone. This might be the last genuinely outdoor dirt track 10 scale world championships. It might be, it might not. The sport has a history of changing, and there's lots of swings and roundabouts, and who knows where we'll be in 2027. But it's possible that this might be a really unique and a last kind of hurrah, if you like, for dirt racing in that style that we do it in Australia.
Yeah.
Until it's our turn again in another 10 years, and and we run it at
Well,
Miriam Vale in the showgrounds, right? Who knows?
10 years.
Yeah.
I think we'll be pushing for that one. What was it? Was it 89 the last one, or 81?
Yeah, the last time the 10 scale off-road
89.
worlds was in Australia was 89. Yeah,
89.
it's amazing
So
how many world champs there have been in Australia over the years, but
yeah,
that's the last 10 scale one.
10 scale off road. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, that will be interesting. Yeah, as we say, it'll be interesting to see how the companies sort of adapt their cars to
Yeah.
sort of suit, possibly bringing in more sort of new, unique parts
Yeah.
for the event. Whereas Associated, at least, I know that they didn't announce or release that many new parts to suit the
Yeah.
track, because I mean their cars
Yeah.
are built around US tracks. TLR had some sort of, a couple of little bits and bobs. I know that it's going to be terrible. I've forgotten his name. The young fella that actually won Tour Drive.
Yep.
Can you remember his name? Jesus. Someone bring it up in the
I'm
comments.
going to leave you hanging there, Mitch.
Yeah, I know. This is really hurting me because I had a good chat with him and everything. Completely forgotten his name. Someone type him.
Tater Sontag.
Tater Sontag.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
I didn't remember either. I'm just Googling, mate.
Yeah,
So that's commentator's
Perfect.
curse right there.
Yeah, Tater Sontag. Travis, you were 10 seconds late. Martin, you were 11 seconds late. No, thank you very much. Yeah, I know that Tater originally in our interview, he actually said that everything was box.
Yeah.
It later came out that a lot of things
I don't think so.
must have been added into that box.
Yeah.
Just chucked in.
Yeah.
So,
We'll put all the parts in the box and then it's boxed. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So it does sound like I had quite a lot of modification parts.
Can we dive into that for a second? Because I think there's a couple of things that hey, I'm on the show. You said you're free till 8 o'clock. So what the heck? So it's a couple of things I'm just interested in. One is, how many of these teams are we going to see in Australia over the next couple of years? Because we might be looking at the kind of hark back to the prototype kind of cars running that we saw way back in the 90s, where a car would be developed to really suit a particular racetrack. So if it is Sydney, and it is going to be this low to medium grip sort of level, I would imagine we're going to see some of these factory squads out here over the next 18 months to start to figure out what they need to do with the cars. And I will not at all be surprised if we don't see some pretty interesting prototype stuff run at that Worlds. That might not make it to the market, because the market for a car for that style of racing won't be super big. We know that.
Very small, yeah.
But I reckon we're going to see some interesting people visiting Australia, and we're going to see some pretty interesting an interesting development race focused around that one event, which I think might end up just being that kind of prototype stuff. Anthony, I think rear motor is gone. I think rear motor is gone. And if we could talk to Ray Monday about that, who would say even on a slippery track, the modern mid-motor cars are just faster.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be pretty fun to do the Worlds in a mid-motor and a rear motor car.
Yeah.
And the other thing, we just talked about Tater Sontag. I think it was awesome for him to win the Worlds. And, he, like, you were there. I was only watching on TV like the rest of us. But to see someone like that do, what other people like, say, Ryan Cavalieri have done, when he came, almost from not obscurity, but he wasn't the favourite when he won his first World Championships at a very similar age. So to see what happens with Tater over the next couple of years, he's not going to suddenly win every race meeting. There's too many good guys for that. But, it'd be interesting to see whether he's the kind of guy like Ryan, like Cavalieri, who, then becomes one of the all-time best in the world, or whether he is a one-time one and done. And there's been some of those in the history of the sport as well. But you don't win a race like that without having serious talent. And he looked amazing on TV. You were there. But I'm really interested to see where him and the other kind of young crew that are floating around that, make even someone like Orlowski now look old or experienced, shall we say. There's so much young talent. To see what they're all up to over the next 18 months is going to be awesome.
Did have quite a, to me at least, it did have quite a Spencer Rivkin first world champion sort of vibe as well.
Rivkin's the other one. Yeah, that's
I know Scotty actually nailed it with his commentary, and I've rewatched this race from Yet to Be Arena a couple of times, where Scotty actually mentions, he was Rivkin was just trying to make the main. His end goal was just to make the main.
Yeah.
And, he wins A1, and then I think pretty sure he comes back in Tour Drive and just wins A3. And it goes from, a hopeful driver to make the top 10 to a world champion with realistically very little knowledge. Oh, we've lost Scotty. He'll come back. All right, we'll continue on. Yeah, relative obscurity. Hopefully, Scotty comes back at least. To a world champion virtually in a period of just probably 2 days. You could see it from qualifying, sort of work their way to finals. Here he comes. He's making his way back on. Hopefully. Here he is. He's
Sorry,
back.
mate.
We got him back.
I still was here. I could hear everything you were saying. I just had
Oh, okay,
a couple of
perfect.
things
So-
going on in the room, so I just had to turn things off for a second.
No problem at all. So yeah, it was good to, we saw in like early stages of qualifying his name, and this was all the way from four-wheel drive day as well. We saw his name right around the top of four-wheel drive qualifying. We thought, okay, well, this kid is quick.
Yeah.
And then two-wheel drive, he was just next level quick. And that's where he sort of really shone him. I missed out on the A main and four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
He ended up dominating the B main, and with lap times and speed and that sort of stuff, that was well and truly quick enough to be top 5 in the A main. But unfortunately, it's not comparable if you're out front of the B main,
No, it's different.
back of the A main. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all been in that
We
situation.
all do it, but it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything.
Never works out well.
Yeah.
But so it'll be very interesting to see how he does over in Australia, and I'd expect him to be over here as well as majority, if not all, of the other big name American drivers that are hopefully still all racing by that point, and we're seeing a couple sort of dropping off in the last few years. One of them being Tebow, who unfortunately wasn't there at the Worlds, but yeah. So that will be extremely exciting, and actually I have heard word, and I won't name names, but got a message the other day looking for at least some sort of a schedule from RCRA to try to pass on to drivers from around the world. Because there was quite a bit of interest from drivers wanting to come over to here for at least larger events or for certain events to plan out, at least a bit of a trip. Whether they're testing at the official track, which would probably be the most likely reason for them to coming over.
It's the smartest thing to do.
Yeah. Or just, I guess a holiday racing trip. But I'd say the most likely reason would be to test out the world track and see the facility. That's
and if you can combine that with, if you combine a testing trip with, one of the bigger races, so the Asian Buggy Champs race, or, a race of that kind of style and size, then it's worth coming over. That'd be pretty cool, Anthony, wouldn't it, if we could get Jay Halsey over here running at the Vintage Bash, or Gil Losey Jr., or there's been some attempts to get people like Jamie Booth and Craig Drescher out here for the Vintage Bash, and maybe 2024 might be the time.
Perfect opportunity.
That'd be very cool. Yeah.
So that
it's awesome. Rory Cole, we know, most of us will know the story of Rory Cole, two-time world's A finalist in the 80s and early 90s, and won races all over the world, and now living in Melbourne, and was coaxed out of retirement by the Vintage Bash crew last year, was there again this year, brought his car that, as it literally had come off the track at the 1994 European Championships in Austria, same electronics, actually the same tyres, the whole shebang, brought it to the racetrack. And and so to see someone like Rory, and he blew up most of those electronics, and the story didn't end quite so well, but to see someone like him, one of the legit superstars of that era, at the Vintage Bash was awesome. Hello, Lou Solar, watch this spot. Lou might have news. I'd
say we're all looking forward to that one. So
I think Vintage Bash 3 should, and I'm assuming here that it's going to go ahead. I think that will be the race of the year. And I don't care whether you like vintage or not. It will just be awesome racing, and great cars, and a good time. So when that date is announced, get it in your diary. Stat.
And another thing with that is, has it got a location confirmed? Will it be at Keilor or back in?
No, I don't think so yet. I think the crew, and that's Lou and Andy and Aaron and Scotty, and blessings to Scotty Giles. He took a tumble at the Vintage Bash and hurt his leg, and he's hopefully in recovery. So blessings to you, Scotty, and hope that recovery goes well. And Tony Gray, the crew, and their supporters, people like Kearns Hobbies, who are a big supporter, Outsiders RC, Andy's GP3D, they'll kind of get their heads around, where it's going to be. What I reckon I could safely guess is that it will be a track that is, a vintage friendly kind of track physically, but also a club that gets vintage. So, whether it's Knox again or whether it's Keilor or whether it goes out into the countryside, who knows? But the guys they'll get their heads around that, and as soon as they're able to say something and a date, they will, because their interest is very high.
Yeah.
Including from some of the young guys, right? So it was, one of the highlights of the race was Lockie Monday versus Ray Monday in two-wheel drive competition. Lockie's driving a team associated RC10 B3 from whenever they came out, around 97 or 98, something like that. And, Ray's there in his 1992 Shoemaker Cougar 2, and they're head to head, right? The father and son head to head, like one of the very best drivers in the country right now in Lachlan, and one of the all-time greats in the form of Ray. So it's not just old blokes like me that enjoy driving these cars. We saw some smiles on some pretty young guys' faces as well. Yeah.
Actually, Anthony Miller just chucked up a good comment there. There is racing against kids that were not even born when the cars come out. Yeah.
That's all good. And that's part of the fun. It is people like me that have been around forever, people like Lou Sola that have been around forever, Tony Gray, those kind of guys. There's another whole crew as well that are part of the bash, and that who I was really my first encounter, and that's the kind of the real collectors that who, like I said before, there's lots of ways to enjoy the sport, and I talked about how I enjoy it, but there's people there, and Bormac Jason from Sydney is a classic example of this, but there are others, James Knight and others, who have the most extraordinary collections and just love building, presenting, telling the stories of these cars, even if they're not themselves hardcore racers, if you get what I mean. They race and they have a good time, but it's actually the collection and the collector, and that was a whole group of people who I'd not met many of before the weekend. And I plonked myself down on an esky across from James Knight at one stage and said, show me what you've got here. And he just pulls out these unbelievable cars from all over the sport. There's Anthony, a brand called Marui that most modern racers would never have heard of. And there's a guy there with every Marui from the whole series of cars. And to be honest, most of them were terrible, but that's beside the point. They're part of the story. They're part of the history of the sport. So that's another kind of group of people that love the bash. They're really not there to win the race. They're there because they love these cars and they want to drive them on a racetrack with other people. And that was fun. There you go, Rafi. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yep.
But it just looked like all around an incredible event. Boss Dominic Blackman from Hybrid, he came back and he said he had an absolute ball down there. As mentioned, we had a good crew of chargers going down there, and Jeno, Nathan Martin, just a really good group. Obviously yourself there as well. Not for the racing side, for the race calling, but you'd been able to be in their presence and seen them enjoying a hobby that you've loved for this long as well.
It's nothing quite like being in Nathan Marsh's presence. It's a very special experience. No, it is like that reminds you that traveling away to a race is one of the best things. Like it is, and whether you win, lose or draw doesn't matter. So I've said many times over the years, and I'll say it again, like if you have a chance to travel to a big race, whether it's a state of nationals, a vintage bash, whatever it is, it doesn't matter whether you're last in the D final or first in the A. Like take the chance. Like it's so much fun to hang out together with your mates, and the world shrinks over that weekend, and you're just hanging out playing with toy cars, and it's awesome. And we had a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's not even just driving, say, interstate, driving somewhat locally and staying nearby. So if it's for a state titles, as you mentioned, like just a big race meeting 2-dayer, staying local to the track with a couple of other mates, get an Airbnb. Get an Airbnb with 8 bedrooms, going to cost a fortune, but split amongst 8 people is going to cost all of like $80 a night or something along those lines.
That's awesome.
Ends up working out cheaper than a hotel, and you will have the best time.
Yeah,
it's a guarantee. Realistically, everyone enjoys a couple of beverages. At the end of the day, you start talking a bit of smack between you. Who's going to beat who? And next thing you know, it's just an epic night. So, there's so many of those situations that I personally have had, and I know that you would have had even a lot more than what I have had. So, it's got to be done.
It's awesome.
One of my favorite events, and this is an event that I've only just remembered sort of just then, is actually, I believe, was a 1-day event, but we all travel up as a big group from the Gold Coast. And I think it was called the Race for Lila. Is it Lila or Lola?
Okay.
And it was up at Sunshine Coast, and it was for one of the committee members had a very sick young child.
Yep.
And so we all went up to Sunshine Coast. I think we left the Gold Coast at probably all of about 3:30 in the morning. And it was this most incredible, massive day, 2-hour drive up, 2-hour drive back, and just racing all day long, nitro, electric, 10 scale, 8 scale, absolutely everything. All of our club, we all sat together, all helped each other out, glued tires up just for this one event, never raced outdoors before. And it was just the most incredible experience. We didn't end up getting home until I think about 3:30, 4 a.m. the next day. So we were up, out of the house for at least 24 hours, and just, incredible memories of what was an incredible meeting.
It's unreal, isn't it? And not only is it fun for you guys, but it is also a reminder, isn't it, that when RC guys get together and do something that is bigger than the sport. So in that case, that race,
racing for someone,
this Sunday it charges, the kind of Andrew Karting Memorial Race, recognizing that this wonderful guy Andrew Karting and all the work he did around under the brand Man Up, around raising awareness around prostate cancer, and after his sad passing, that legacy lives on, in a race like that. And there's been lots of other races over the years of, the Coleman Cup is a famous example in Victoria, and named after the memory of Brendan. And that's one of the awesome things about RC as well, is when we get outside of ourselves, and think about, we in the end we are playing with toy cars, but we can do it in a way that makes a kind of a contribution to a bigger story, and that's pretty fun. Yeah.
No, exactly right. And
gee, I do keep getting serious, don't I? Sorry. That's
somehow we started off with
get Josh Payne on here. Come on. No.
Yeah, Payne would be a proper laugh, and I actually hope to interview him one day on here.
I think one day. The question is, will Andrew Gillett and Josh Payne race in the 2025 Worlds? That's the question.
I don't think it's far enough to travel, to be honest. I don't know how they're gonna do their 3-week lead up to the event of no practice and mountain biking.
Just a weekend in Sydney. Yeah, it's not enough, is it? No.
So maybe we'll have to see.
We'll see. Yeah.
All right.
Beautiful.
So we've somewhat come full circle from racing to gone through Action RC, recent events, and back to recent events and racing in general. That does cover pretty much all of my general talking points, and that's the side of things that I can at least think of off the top of my head / jotted down on my 15 dot point notes on my phone that I didn't scratch up in 3.5 minutes before we came on, I promise. So look, it's been a really good talk. If there's any questions and stuff before we run away back to our normal daily life realm of playing with RC cars all night long and not going to sleep, by all means, ask him away.
If anybody wants a blow-by-blow description of the 1992 New South Wales Championship 4-Drive A final, just let me know. We can talk you through it. Full of useless information.
Actually, that's one good point. Thank you very much, Chris. The Legend of Heavy D. It's a name that's extremely well renowned around Southeast Queensland, but also quite obviously well renowned around Australia. Let's have a chat about him for a fair while.
So heavy David Guyatt, it's my dad. He built that first Tamiya hotshot that we started with in 1985, and don't want to kind of wax lyrical too much, but I had just an idyllic kind of family childhood, and he was awesome. And we raced together, and that I would not have enjoyed RC, and I still wouldn't anywhere near as much if it wasn't something that I'd shared with him. And we traveled all over the country. We spent hours and hours and hours in cars driving to Sydney or Melbourne or Canberra, and and then hours and hours and hours driving home, usually in silence because I didn't win or whatever it might have been. And that's kind of it. And he's, right from the beginning of his involvement in the sport, he was one of the people who, sees that there's an opportunity to contribute. So, almost straight away when we got involved, he jumped into the local club and got involved in club administration. And then, not too long after that, in those days, there were state associations, under the banner of ORCA, the Off-Road Radio Control Association. There was an ORCA in Queensland in each different state. And so he led that, or was involved in leading that for many years, alongside people like Barry Fry, for example, or Andrew Lyons, these incredible people. got involved in race administration, so I was race directing and helping run the computer side of things for many years as we in Australia started to kind of figure out how to run races on a computerized basis. So he was the carrier of that in Queensland for many years, and then the retail stuff that came later on. So first Heavy's Hobbies, and then later on Action RC. So yeah, he's well known around the place, and certainly for me, like a huge part of why I still enjoy racing. And if I'm going racing and and Dad's available, he'll come and hang out at the racetrack. And similarly, if he's heading down to the track with the vintage cars and I can find a way to get there, I'll go and hang out with him. And yeah, I think clearly I'm biased, but I think widely respected for not just his character, but for what he's brought and given to the sport in lots of different ways: administration, racing, and then on the business side. Got within a whisker of an Australian championship himself in 1993, beaten to the line in four-wheel drive 540 by a young Brad Verco.
Wow.
Brad's still floating around. I think it was Brad
Yep.
first and Dad second, something like that. He was definitely on the podium. So got, on his day when he wasn't running the shop or running a race meeting, he was a decent steerer as well. But that's, we've all got those stories. But yeah, so that's the David Guyatt story. Like, he still loves it. He's out at the racetrack with his kind of collection of vintage cars whenever he gets a chance. Doesn't race actively in the modern scene anymore, or shall we say at the moment. Who knows? But yeah, he's a good guy. He's my dad. I think he's awesome. But lots of people know him and have come to the sport or come to enjoy the sport in some way. There's tons of people like that, right? And that that's his story, and that's a story I know and love. But I just, you can reel off the names, and I know the Queensland names better than the names in other places, but there are names all over Australia and the world of people who have given and continue to give of themselves to make this sport awesome. And we talked about Neil Kovacs before when we were talking about the Vintage Bash. You could name the people that were in WA running the race over there when you were there for the Nats, or the guys who are in Sydney, and the people who run the little club race meeting that no one's ever heard of every Saturday afternoon or every Sunday. It's awesome. It's awesome. We do this together, and it only happens because people like that wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to help run a race meeting today so people can have fun. Yeah. Sorry. I get serious fast. That's how it is.
No,
that's how we roll.
Yeah. No, actually, a name you brought up there as well, beaten to the post by Brad Verco.
Yeah.
The very same Brad Verco that just competed over in the US for the world titles.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, another name that's sort of still getting around, and enjoying this hobby. And I have linked this hobby to, I don't know, a magnet / a piece of bait. You can, as you mentioned before, you leave the hobby for a while. I've gotten out of it, I think, about 3 times in my short time of racing of probably about 15 years or something like that. And every time you sort of go away and then something will just pop up and you go, I haven't got much else to do, so I may as well fill the time in and just, I'll do it for a bit of fun just for now.
Yeah.
And then you get further into it, and then you end up going, okay, well, I go to the state titles, and you do that, and then you go, all right, well, I had a good fun, time with that one. Let's go to the national, and it just builds on from there. I really feel like it is like a magnet to sort of lead you back in as soon as you get away from it. So
it's good. I've long ago stopped saying I'm retiring, I'm quitting. Like, I take a break, I come back for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 and see what happens. And it's Simon Camilleri that is to blame right now for me sitting here going, is there a more serious tilt at 10 scale next year in my horizons? And could I race at a Worlds? So Simon, if you ever should watch this, I'm holding you responsible for that.
All right.
It's awesome. Yeah, come and go away, enjoy what you do. If you want to come back and have fun. It's awesome. Yeah.
Tony's got a question here, quite similar along the lines of probably favorite event 4, but it probably worded a bit differently and in a way that's probably easier to answer / harder to answer as well at the same time. So
for me, those races that were iconic in their moment, so that Bormac Race of Champions, like, to get those 16 guys, and half of them are still racing actively, to get those 16 guys together head to head in 1993 spec cars, which is kind of part of what happened at the Vintage Bash. We had a little bit of a crack at that. But there's other amazing races along the way. Like imagine being at that, that first race that Colin McBride wins his first national championship, or when he's So there's any number of races over the years. That Illawarra Nationals of '93 does stand out for me because it sucked, it rained, and and like I didn't go all that well in most of the classes, but for a race, 350 cars. It was incredible, and that's an era too where I don't know if we want to get into this, but that's an era where there's serious rivalries, right, between Associated and Losi, between New South Wales and Victoria. We see you, New South Wales and Victoria. We sat up here in Queensland and watched on, but it was ferocious. And so, for that, the whole scene, and we were by that stage a couple of years into traveling. We had a good crew from Queensland, and that felt like a monster race meeting. And so and it was a fun track as well. The same place that the Illawarra 8-Scar track is still now, Albion Park, I think it is, Froome Road, however it is. So that's one that stands out as an iconic event, and for lots of reasons. And to see the ferocious head-to-head kind of rivalries between Victoria and New South Wales and Associated Losi, the first big race with Proline tyres. There was so much that went on at that race. Brand new technology batteries that changed the game. So that's one that stands out as a race that. Anyway, sorry, Tony, you asked. There's an answer for you.
I feel like the answer could have been about 10 minutes longer, at least, if you wanted to push.
I'm trying to shut myself up. I am. Ben Panic was there. Like there's so many people who are still names in RC today who were running in that race meeting, and at the front of that race meeting. Darren Perry finishes second. There's all sorts of people who have been household names over the life of the sport. Andrew Gillett, like it's an endless list that were at that race in 1993, and it was huge. And anyone that was there can jump into the comments and leave your memories. But apart from the rain, which sucked, the track was fun and the event was awesome.
Yeah. No, I think we all have sort of events that we would definitely like to go back and revisit, and from the start to beginning. It's actually a really well-worded version of what's my version of which was what's your favorite event. So
your personal favorite event's going to be different, right? And Illawarra outside of the truck thing didn't go very well for me, so I didn't enjoy it, two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive at all. But the event was incredible. Yeah.
No, exactly. We've had a great chat. Okay, one more. Come on, let's go. That's a good topic for our next chat, Scotty. 93, 94 Nats.
Yeah. Yep. 93 Illawarra, 94 Keilor. I lobbed up there with a broken ankle on crutches. That was interesting. But and that that is a story for Lou to tell, really, that the internal rivalries within Victoria alone, which were kind of on show for the world to see at that race. At the very front of the two-wheel modified A final, and and the track was awesome. One of those tracks that had elevation, same place that the track is now at Keilor, but the back of it was kind of built up a bit higher, and it is as it is today. Awesome race. And Lou and I may or may not have met in the B final, which unfortunately happened a bit too often. No, I think Lou was in the A final at that one at Keilor, 94. Get Lou on the show. Get Lou to come and tell you some stories from the good old days. One of the absolute, not only gentlemen, but genuine good guys and legends of the sport in this country, Lou Solar. Yeah, he's a good fella.
Yeah. No, I've had the opportunity to meet Lou a couple of times, and exactly the same experience. He's a real nice bloke.
Yeah.
I had a question. How is your memory so damn good? That's what I want to know. It's a question that's completely unrelated to RC, at the same time as somewhat related. Because you best believe I struggle to know what I did for work yesterday. And it's not because I didn't work, Dom. It is because I just can't remember. All right.
So the thing is, the same is true for me. I cannot tell you what I had for lunch yesterday. I can't remember people's names that I met, 5 minutes ago. Like I really can't. But there's something about I guess it's the years and years and years of writing about the sport, or and just the passion about it. Like, I can't probably tell you what happened at, my memory of the '93 Nationals is probably better than the 2022 Nationals. So there's just something about that era that I lived through which was, for me, was the time when we were chasing it really seriously. And I read every magazine that was published around the world, the magazines out of the UK, Radio Race Car, Model Cars Monthly, the magazines out of the US, RC Car Action, every Australian magazine ever produced by people like Tony Gray, Mel Gillett, Dave Smith, those kinds of people who produced Dirt and Track and Racing Lines. And I loved it. And I still do. Like, I don't love it in a way that has me at the racetrack every waking moment or every weekend even. And if I don't go racing on a weekend, that's fine. But I love the sport and the people in it and the stories of the sport. So I guess what you love sticks in your mind a bit better than what you did for work yesterday. Weekend. Sorry,
Yeah.
Dom. Yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it either. And and I've said this lots of times too. I'm actually very introverted and shy, but once I start, speaking about this sport, and whether that's on a microphone at a racetrack or in a situation like this, that the stories come for whatever reason they come. And if that helps some other people by putting a smile on their face because I, talk about a race that they remembered or a car that they loved, then that's so much the better. Which does take us right back to the beginning of saying, we're all about making this sport awesome. And, if remembering some of these stories helps make it awesome for someone, then that's amazing.
Yeah. No. Man, this hobby, I know from my side of things, has done so much for me.
Yeah.
And that's why I have that sort of want, that sort of need to give something back, I guess. It feels almost like a necessity on my side, but it's a hobby that I still absolutely love and enjoy. So,
Yep.
oh, good. But yeah, I thought I had unplugged my microphone for a second. It was making a weird flash, nonetheless. We'll start to wrap things up, Scotty. We've
We
been
should.
talking.
Yeah,
We've been
we
talking
should.
for a good hour and 3/4 now.
We need to let people go before we start analysing the Nationals results and the upcoming 12 Scale World Championships and, every other kind of thing under the sun.
Yes, 12 scale world titles over in Florida. We'll briefly mention that. Yeah,
that is going to be awesome, right? Like, actually, that is just worth saying. Like,
yeah.
do I not just say every race is going to be awesome? But you've got these
Yeah.
guys like Orlowski, Coelho, Ollie Payne, Alex Hagberg, Mark Reinhardt, these kind of guys. And then you've got this young talent that's coming out of the US at the moment, Sam Isaacs and Kemp Anderson and people like that. And I just have this feeling that we could be on for the first American on-road electric world champion in quite a long time.
Yep.
And that would be sensational. Like, imagine if someone, one of those guys, Sam Isaacs, wins this world championship and beats all those European guys. That would be just incredible. So I don't know how much of it I'll watch. And 12 scale is like such a phenomenal class on carpet. I don't know how they drive them, but I'm going to follow the story of that race pretty closely because I want to see how these young American hotshots, and they're really coming hard, go up against these, the absolute superstars out of Europe, and maybe a surprise Japanese driver or two. You never know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Make 12 scale great again. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually thought the 12 scale pan cars were part of the 10 scale electric on road world, but
they did run together for a while. So for a few years they ran together, but in more recent times, there's really kind of been this sense of actually 12 scale is a different. They don't run on the same tracks. 12 scale really at that level is indoors on carpet. That's where it works the best. And 10 scale, is still at a world championship level. We've not, or I'm going to say something I may be wrong about, but let's say it anyway. We've not run a world championship touring car race indoors on carpet yet. Like, it's an outdoor bitumen at world championship level. So yeah, they ran together for a few years, but then really that, you'd have to go look in the record books, but maybe 10 years ago they started. So even if they were running at the same time, they would run on a different racetrack. And so that's but now it's become its own separate event. So yeah, we're in Florida in a couple of weeks' time. Well, We're not, but the race is. You know,
Would have liked
last
to
World
be there.
Championship we've had 4 within a few months. What an awesome season of World Championship racing. Yeah.
Yeah, and they've really seemed to have just clumped them all together this year. I
Yeah.
don't know whether it's always been like that, but it really does feel
It's
like there's been a
yeah.
lot of events towards the later.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's all post-COVID stuff, isn't it? And it's seasonal, so you're running these races in the northern kind of spring, summer,
Yep.
autumn, and then the indoor 12 scale is a winter class in the US, so that's why it's in December, I guess.
Yep.
But I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
Sound convincing. That's the idea.
Yes, exactly. And one last thing, I know I promise that this is going to be the last thing, and Pete brought it up. We have to have a quick mention of the 10 scale off-road results. As a couple of our local heroes went over there and had an incredible run. From the modified side, Sturdy went over there and he did his business. Is it 11-time national champion now?
Yeah, it's 11 or 12, something. I think it's 11. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I haven't got the records right in front of me, but it's about that. It's the most by anyone ever in 10 scale. Now, Chris stands alone. So, you know, prior to this year, I think he was level with Matt Griffin. If we exclude truck, I think he was level with Matt Griffin. Now he stands alone. And that is, you know, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 4 of those have come on home soil in Queensland, but the rest of them have come all over the country. And yeah, Chris is a local guy and I know him and his dad really well, but you have to say, like, that is a phenomenal achievement over, you know, a 10-year period to win 11 national championships against, you know, and the talent keeps coming. And, you know, and we've got some unreal drivers around the country at the moment and some young talent that's hungry. Chris just keeps doing the business. And you wouldn't bet against him for next year as well at this stage. Pretty awesome to go over there and win modified. Yeah, like I said, didn't get to watch as much of it as we would have liked because we were on track at the Bash, but
missed out on a bit of live coverage as well. But nonetheless, it looked like a really good event. I know Associated, if anyone wants to watch a bit of footage from the actual event, Team Associated Australia has some footage live stream from the event. You can jump on and see the sort of the track, the racing that happened at the time, that sort of things.
And then you got to talk about stock, right? Peter's asked the question.
100%. So I was leaving that to last, saving the best to last.
I'm watching it going, it's a tale of, it's 2 different stories kind of colliding there, right? So you've got Andrew Salvaggi, who's been one of the best in the country for a long time, vastly experienced, does an incredible job running the Team Associated team, goes over there as defending champion, wins one of the classes. And he's not old, by the way, but he's got a lot of experience. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got Phoenix Eggleton, the 10-year-old, you know, kid out of northern New South Wales, who's with a bullet, and you know his family are doing great things with him, and he goes over there, and I'm guessing they went over there thinking, you know, like around or just off the podium would be awesome, but he clearly was amazing, and to win. We did go scrambling in the record books. The only younger driver that I know of for sure to win an open class national championship is a young man by the name of Oscar Piastri, who won in Bendigo at 9 years of age. So Phoenix has won it at age 10. You know, there are other junior drivers who have won open class nationals, but way back in the day, but I don't know exactly how old they were. So that we know of, Oscar at 9 is the youngest, and Phoenix at 10 is the kind of next. If you're going to get compared to someone like Oscar Piastri, you know, and you're going to beat someone like Andrew Salvaggi to do it, yeah. Let's see what happens there over the next 3 to 5 years, hey?
Yes. And from to my knowledge, and I've had a good chat with Pete on and off, and we're actually going to have a chat in person with young Eggleton this weekend. I'm going to have that on the back on my channel. It won't be live; it'll just be a video sort of interview. But what it sounds like young Phoenix is going to be making the move up to mod, and with the attempt, obviously, to make it to the world titles in 2025.
Yeah,
so
I've seen them selling stock speed controls and, you know, practicing in mod for the Queensland titles in a couple of weeks. So jumping all in, and you know, it's like what you want is for him to be enjoying it, loving it, having a great time, and for their family to be likewise. And if success comes as well, then that awesome.
bonus. Yeah.
But yeah, to go over there and win at that age, you know, against like not a huge field, but quality field, you know.
Yep.
Robbie Maycock and Andrew Salvaggi, you know, would be on the podium at any national championship in the last 5 years. So to
Yep.
beat those guys,
Yeah, and I've actually just been bringing up the result as we've been sort of talking.
Yeah.
Let's see. So it would be 4-wheel drive day, not 2-wheel drive day. On the 2-wheel drive day, Young Eggleton actually raced in juniors,
in the junior,
rather than in the adult category or the actual open category. And his lap times and times in general were just as quick, if not quicker. To be beating or at least competitive in, you know, for the overall national ranking again.
Yeah.
So
who was it? Mitch, who was it that came second in junior? I've just lost the name. I just want to give him a shout out as well, because I thought, you know, for Phoenix, clearly national standard driver, but didn't win junior by laps and laps and laps. You know, there were some of the other, and I wish I could remember the young fella's name. I think he's from WA, but you know, that's
Rob Maycock actually. Robert Maycock.
Oh, he did. He was second.
He got second, but Elliot Grierson
and Elliot,
Elliot
so those
Grierson,
two, you know, those two more to, you know, really keep an eye on.
And Elliot actually got 2 seconds. So Elliot got 2 seconds in A1 and A2. But Robbie ended up winning A3 with a first and a third, beating on points.
2 seconds.
So, you know, both drivers obviously being extremely close on track. You know, times are extremely comparable between the two of them. Elliot actually didn't run the last main by the looks of it all.
Okay. Yeah.
So
there might have been some trouble there, but But you know, I thought his times were good, and you know, that's, you know, it's just like, doesn't it just warm your heart? Doesn't it warm the cockles of your heart, mate, to see these young guys that are just going fast? And Phoenix is, you know, the one, if you like, for the moment. But there's tons of others. There's tons of quick kids in Sydney, and there's tons of quick kids around Brisbane, and there's quick 8 scale. You know, oh my gosh, Zach Foster from South Australia. How old's he? 11, like unreal. 11, 12. I don't know how it is, 11 or 12, something like that. But just awesome. Yeah, awesome.
Slowly catching up on us as well, if not past us already.
I'm never beating Phoenix again. Not ever. Not ever. We had some great. He and I went head to head really hard at the Asian Buggy Champs race in 1 or 2 of the finals, and it was awesome racing. I'm never beating him again. Like that's you know, that was the one. Like I managed it on that occasion. Never again. Yeah.
You know that time where the crossover period is when they're sort of like, all right, 1 or 2 places behind, and the next race where you've gone backwards and they've gone about 6 steps above, and you're like, oh, okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's how it should be, right? Like, you know, 50-year-olds shouldn't be winning nationals. Like it, you know, I'm not there to win it anymore, but it's nice to see someone coming and to see the progression that you've seen in someone like Phoenix. And like we've said, there's any number of other names. I think Zach Foster is a really good example of just a, you know, a quality young driver who I don't know him or his family at all. I live on the other side of the country, but to see what they do over the next couple of years, it'd be pretty cool if he did a bit of 10 scale and had a shot at the Worlds. You know, I love this sport, mate. It's awesome. How good.
I know, we can talk all night. And on that as well, Zach Foster, the next Australian 8 scale nationals being in South Australia at Zach's home track as well.
Yeah.
Great opportunity for Zach. You know, he'll be able to do a
Jaden
ton of running. Yeah,
Andrew Ford. What price Andrew Ford, a national champion? Hey, come on, 40.
Yeah, 40 was quick over in Western Australia. Oh man, we could talk around. Oh no, and Dominic Blackman has finally shown up. Come on, Scotty, 50 is the new 20. He's finally made an appearance here. Dom, we've been talking about you the entire episode. We've been bad mouthing you, mainly Scotty. Scotty has been bad mouthing you the entire episode, not me. I've been saying I'm a hard working employee of Hybrid.
Yeah.
You know,
let me encourage you to watch this back, Dom, and see if that's actually true. Yeah.
But yeah, no, okay. We need to wrap this up. We've been talking for 2 hours now.
Okay, sorry. No more tangents. Thank you for having me.
No more questions. no more. No, okay. But yeah, no, thank you so much for jumping on, Scotty. I really appreciate your time. And you know, if anyone hasn't checked out the Action RC podcast, by all means, jump on in, check out whoever you think you're going to enjoy the most,
Yeah.
jump on that, and you will be hooked. Because that's how I started off. I listened
Thank
to
you. Yeah.
listened to one, and I've now listened on to
Go
hundreds of
find the
hours of
Mitch.
your
Go
stuff.
find the Mitch on the mic episode. We did a race. We do a season preview. I think we did for
Yeah, a bit
last
of a
year's
season
season, something
preview.
like that. Yeah.
That was early on,
No,
and
it's good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Anywhere you
no-
find podcasts, Spotify,
Yep.
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, like wherever you find podcasts, you'll find
Yeah.
us. Find Action RC on Facebook, and join in. And there's always announcements there when new episodes are coming. Yeah.
Yep, exactly right. And you go to events and take photos, do updates of events, that sort of side of things as well. So a bit of
Yeah.
media coverage in
Yeah.
general as well. So
My
by all means.
last story, the funniest thing that happened at the bash was that I was standing chatting with someone. Can't remember who. Somebody walked past and literally stopped and turned around and looked at me and said, "Are you the podcast guy?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "I just recognized your voice." So yeah, a
Perfect.
face for radio, but a voice that got me recognized, as you would as well as
Yes, I have a
Yeah.
special shirt just for that reason. All right, let's wrap it up.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much for jumping on, mate.
Pleasure.
And we'll talk to you trackside soon enough.
We will, and I'm looking forward to seeing you chat with Jesse Davis. Is that still happening tomorrow night?
Yes, we will be talking to Jesse very
8-Star Worlds.
soon.
Oh, that would have been what an experience. So close to a podium. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Stop, Scott. Let you go. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, mate. I'll have a quick solo chat and we'll
Okay.
discuss that by ourselves for a
Kick me
little
out.
while.
I'll talk to you
Thank
later
you
on.
so much, mate.
See you guys.
We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Oh. Okay, let's see. Solo. Oh, need to change that over. Sooner or later, we'll get this down packed. And oh god, something popped up. There we go. Alrighty. Massive chat, obviously. Thank you very much to Scotty. As mentioned, jump on over to Action RC. The stuff that he's doing for our hobby with the podcast and in general is massive. The family's been well and truly involved in the hobby for an extensive amount of time now. So help out where he can as well. Help him out where he can. And if that just means listening onto the podcast, by all means. If, I'm pretty sure he has a donation way. I think it's Buy Me a Coffee. If you can help out via that for him as well, that's epic. I'm sure he'd be extremely thankful for that sort of side of things. Onto that as well. Briefly touched on, Western Australia results from the 10 scale nationals. Previous event, obviously, I went down to Sydney, covered a little bit of that as well. We had a great event down in Sydney, so a massive thank you to the Castle Hill crew down there. They did an awesome job running the event down there. I couldn't leave them out of this one, even though it's a completely different subject and that sort of side of things, off-road, on-road. There's a little bit of on-road talk. Nonetheless, the crew down there did an epic job to host the event. It's a very interesting town in Wayland. But incredible facility that they have there. So it was awesome to be able to be a part of that. And the coverage itself, obviously, once again, RC Race Media, I can't say enough for that crew. If you're having a large event, if you can get those guys there, it is so good to have them trackside. I can't say enough of the quality of their the show that they put on, the ability to be able to watch back the races, and you seem to get races every single time come up to you. It's just good to be able to rewatch your races at a later point or show your mates. And I was able to show, once again, Dom brung him up a heap in this, but able to show Dom the incredible racing and modified. So modified A2. If there's ever a race of on-road, once again, we've been talking so much about off-road. If there's ever an on-road race you want to watch from Australian titles, it's modified A2, and watch Jeff Mackey's incredible defense on an old set of tires versus a lot of drivers with a quicker new set of tires. So by all means, jump on that and have a look. Let's see. On to tomorrow as well. So obviously we're streaming again tomorrow. We've got Jesse Davies. And that's going to be a really cool chat. We're going to be talking more so on the on-road side of things, but a little bit different. We're going to be talking about 8-scale GP. If you have any questions and stuff, by all means, send them on over to me and I'll relay them onto Jesse, whether it be mid-show or if you just want to chuck in a comment, that sort of side of things, by all means, jump on in. The more comments, the better. The more interaction, the better in general. So that's going to be a really good one. pretty sure it is a 6 o'clock start. Hopefully, I can remember my own times for once. It'd be good to have a strong memory, but I'm pretty sure it's 6 o'clock start Australian Eastern Standard Time, or 7 p.m. if you live majority of other places around Australia, except for West Coast, which will be a different time again, probably 4 o'clock if I remember correctly. Nonetheless, big thank you again to Scotty for jumping on. Anyone that commented, if I didn't read your comment or get through your comment, I appreciate your comments. It does help to expand on this great hobby, this, you know, the podcast or the stream itself. So I really appreciate all the comments. And yeah, we'll see you and do this all over again tomorrow night. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later. If this damn end stream button works for once.